Yeah.
Nice.
I'm going to pop us a little check-in question in the chat as we're all arriving and settling in. So if you wanted to pop in the chat a little hello, where are you? Where are you calling in from? Which side of the coin are you in? Are you working in government or are you collective imagination? And what do you think of when you hear collective imagination? We're going straight in. It's not but you can go, yeah, answer as briefly or as detailed as you'd like. So where are you? Are you working with government or are you working on the collective imagination side or both? And what do you think of when you hear collective imagination? So let's just hear, yeah, what's in the space, what's in the room as we get started.
Welcome. I think a few more people have joined since the questions went into the chat. So.
Yeah, we'll keep posting them in. Lovely. Welcome, everybody. We just got some check-in questions in the chat.
Looking forward to hearing what people think of when they hear collective imagination.
Yeah, what's top of mind? Lovely. So starting to see some of those coming through. For those who are just arriving, we've just got some check-in questions in the chat. Yeah, so welcoming people from Barnet so far, from Worcestershire, Camden, Lambeth, London. And we've got, yeah, some initial reflections, collective imagination about reframing, involving a range of perspectives in the process. Makes me think about new ways of approaching problems. Lots of curiosity, blue sky thinking, the future. Yeah, well, welcoming, such a geographic range, Cambridgeshire, York. Developing new ideas, perspectives. About collaboration and creativity. Beautiful. And how are we doing numbers-wise?
Yeah, got about 20. Yeah.
Doing about 20. Yeah, lovely. Yeah, so we're probably about getting up to numbers. Lovely. Welcoming people from Hackney, from Canterbury. Got a nerdy answer from Lee. Collective imagination brings to mind interbrain synchrony. I just want to spend some time contemplating those words. But yeah, the idea of being on the same wavelength when our brains and bodies align with each other. Lovely. Yeah, some ideas about sharing skills, going further, doing things differently. Beautiful. Welcoming people from Exeter. Yeah, approaching problems from a radical perspective rather than traditional or institutional approaches. Beautiful. Self-expression, inclusivity, decentralization. So much, so many words to begin. Wonderful. Yeah, I'm wondering, keep them coming in if you're arriving or you haven't had a chance to, or you pop in your reflection on what collective imagination makes you think about, because that's just a great thing to gather as we begin. and really welcoming you all. Thanks so much for taking a slither of time out of your day to join Dan and I in talking about the collective imagination practice community Huddles. My name is Christina, and just by way of a short introduction to me and my relationship to this work, I'm based down in Brighton, and my background is in youth and community education and learning design, drawing on a sort of weave of different approaches from systems thinking, design thinking, and quite a lot of nature-based practice and performance and creativity. And I'm really interested in this, the power of peer-to-peer spaces. I ran a Huddle as part of the Huddlecraft host fellowship last year, centered around our relationship to death, loss, and grief. And I would say it was one of the most transformational experiences of my life. And so I'm big into huddling, big into the power of bringing different perspectives together in a container over a period of time to see what new things can be imagined in that space and be practiced into. And yes, essentially that's really the angle that I'm coming from. I'm really passionate about deeply joyful learning experiences. And I'm running the Huddle that is focusing on local government. And I'll pass over to Dan.
Hi everyone, I'm Dan. I'm one of the co-directors of Huddlecraft, and yeah, we're one of the partners with JRF and Canopy on this collective imagination practice community project. And Huddlecraft.
I can't hear you very well. Is it just me or is it others as well?
Sorry, sometimes my Zoom turns down my audio settings like without. It's like telling me to just shut up or something. I'm like, why does it do that automatically? Yeah, can you hear me now? Yeah, great. Yeah, so Huddlecraft is all about bringing together purposeful peer groups to sort of pool their resources and amplify their impact. We've been doing that for 7 years now. I've been part of the team for a couple of years, and I ran a Huddle a couple of years ago on an experimenting collaboration. So I've got experience hosting these spaces as well. And yeah, before Huddlecraft, I was working at a place called Forum for the Future, which is all about taking a sort of collaborative approach to big, knotty sustainability challenges. So yeah, I'm interested in how do we organize around change in different ways that distribute power, that distribute learning, so that we can continually learn and adapt to changes in our context. That's what I'm really interested in. Yeah, and I'm going to be facilitating one of these huddles as well. So looking forward to telling you a bit about them. So let me tell you a bit about them. That's me, isn't it?
I think it's you, Dan.
I'm just trying to go through the slides. Is that working? Yeah. So what are we going to cover? So we wanted to talk to you a little bit about what collective imagination is. And that is a juicy question, isn't it? And we don't want to pin down a definition really, but like, what are some of the things that we see as being involved in collective imagination? What is a huddle? So what is the process that we're going to be going through? What why are we running this program? Why government contexts? Why might you want to join the program? What are some of the details of the program, the time commitment, that sort of thing? And then yeah, how to apply. And then we'll do a little imagination exercise before going into some Q&A and give you a chance to ask any of the many questions that you might have. Cool. Feel free to pop any questions in the chat as we go as well, and we can gather those and come to those in the Q&A section as well. So what is collective imagination? This is like, yeah, this is like the $1 million question, right? And I think it's important to say that for us as Huddlecraft and for Canopy, it's not about giving a really defined definition of collective imagination that boxes it around certain things. It's intentionally quite expansive and allows in and invites in different approaches. Broadly, it's about social approaches to imagining and building alternative futures that couldn't be imagined or built alone. And so for us, that is the core of it. The collective imagination practice community is a group of people that are kind of coming together around this thing, this collective imagination practice, to deepen their practice, to spread how it's done and to connect and learn from each other. We've been organizing huddles within that community last year as well. And it's worth saying that, yeah, it covers a really wide range of contexts. And the other thing that we've done to kind of enable that community is create a collective imagination practice fund. And maybe we can share a link to one of Zara's blogs about the fund later. But yeah, that's the idea, that we want to make some resource available to people that are putting this into practice and learning from putting it into practice. And so that fund is available to anyone around the world to access up to £3,000 to start putting collective imagination into practice in their local area, their local context. Some of the characteristics that we find useful when talking about collective imagination is that it's practice-based, so it's being learned through practice. It's not just theoretical, it's being done, and it's being learned about how it's being done. It's rooted in growing the capacity of people, so it's sort of inherently about people learning how to do things a bit differently and living into the sort of alternative futures that they're talking about and imagining. It's work that emphasizes the collective, so it's not about what you can imagine as an individual, but it's that juicy stuff that comes from bringing people together and allowing the space for different things to come together and merge and meld and create something a little bit different. They're practices that can lead to material change and shifts. We're interested in connecting what's happening and making sure that it's contributing to a wider change. And that, yeah, it's interested in changing systems, I guess. It's not just insular or about the individual again. And lastly, it's multidisciplinary. So there are loads of different practices within this community, and that it's open to. It's like somatics, different kinds of embodiment, working with different generations. It might be land-based work. It might be work with the more than human world. There are loads of different words for collective imagination that we've gathered around ecological imagination, social imagination. There are different words for this sort of work, and it's just worth saying that different ways in. And like I said, we don't want to put a really strict definition on it, but we've seen that methods within it could include stuff like social foresight, narrative therapy, myth making. Lots of different practices within the community exist. So what is a huddle? And so this is what we're bringing together with collective imagination in sort of our approach to this project. So this is Huddlecraft's approach to peer-to-peer learning, where individuals can incubate their ideas and practice over a period of time. So it's time-bound always, with the accountability, support, and inspiration of the group. So again, it's like, how are we bringing people together in a small, tight-knit community where learning can really happen and deepen, I guess, is what we're interested in. Huddlecraft, we've been doing Huddles for about 7 years now. And so we've tried and tested the structure through different contexts with different sizes in different content areas. Yeah, and it's really, we're sort of learning how powerful this kind of size of group can be for, yeah, deepening learning and practice, and how you can apply what you're learning as well. Cool. And so why are we running this program in particular? So we're interested in bringing together these two groups, and you might be both, but bringing these two things together. So collective imagination practice and practitioners with people that are working in the context of government at different scales. So I think in the first year of the collective imagination practice community, we ran huddles around emerging themes and some place-based ones around the country. And we were interested, after running those huddles, well, what does this look like in contexts where there is significant power and influence, but not always capacity or, you know, resource to really think about and apply these sorts of things. So we're really interested in finding new ways to sort of address some of the structural and social challenges that are of interest to governments of different sizes, by bringing more of the potential of imagination into those spaces. And thinking about how we're growing our collective capacity to imagine and build a just and more equitable future, but really bringing that so that collective imagination practice into a live context where there's influence, I guess, is the sort of underlying principle behind the project. And I'd say it feels experimental as well. It feels like we're learning as we're going, and this hasn't been done before. And like just going into it with a bit of a spirit of this feels like a bit of experiment and we're learning. Feels important to say that as well. Cool. So I'll hand over to you, Tini, to say a little bit more about your one, and then I'll say a bit more about mine in particular as well.
Wonderful. Thanks, Dan. So yeah, collective imagination and local government. And the tagline, as you can see, is around deepening local democracy and participation through collective imagination. And really, I think where this is coming from is we know that local authorities, local government spaces are always looking for ways to make democracy more inclusive. To think about community capacity, of working alongside communities, of tapping into the imagination of the community as well as their own, as we try and, tackle a myriad of big challenges. So really this huddle is about taking that local lens, but a variety of local lenses. And you may have seen that there is a third huddle Jake is running, which is based in Newham around specifically that hyper-local focus of Newham and people who are working in that council. So this is different from that in that it's bringing together anyone working in a local capacity, but different localities. And about, coming together, thinking about how collective imagination practice might enliven those communities, might deepen democracy and practices of democracy, and think about that relationship between council and citizens through an imagination lens is really one of the underlying intentions. And if we think about it on those both sides, again, you might be both, but imagining if you're in the local authority context, maybe you're working in a local authority, maybe you work closely with, and your work, influences local authorities. Perhaps you're feeling stuck about the limitations of your current ways of working. Maybe you're sensing that a different way is possible and feeling kind of intrigued by this space of collective imagination, but wanting to try it out. Maybe you're seeking a community and a container and some peers to practice with. And perhaps you've got a real kind of live challenge or a project that you're feeling has the potential to really to sort of test out and try a new way of working. And again, if you're on the other side, you're in the collective imagination space, again, maybe you're not calling yourself precisely that, maybe it's coming under a different umbrella, but perhaps you see the potential of applying your particular craft and flavour of collective imagination into places of power and resource with a local view. Maybe you're already starting to do that and would like that kind of support and container. Maybe you're also seeking to build kind of a network and more contexts to apply your practice in. And so, I think it's helpful to think about, and we're obviously trying to thinking about both sides of the pools of people who may be drawn to coming on this huddle. So those are the most, I guess, the kind of essence things I would share about the local government huddle. I'll let Dan talk a bit more about his.
Yeah, thanks. So the one that I'm hosting is called Collective Imagination times Government Innovation. And it's for people working on central government innovation, people working in policy labs, policy design, with more of a central government focus, but like how are we innovating how government works, what we're doing in central government, and bringing those people who are working in context together with collective imagination practitioners to really see how the practice can be married to the live context and what happens when you bring that peer exchange into high focus and like really give it some space to start thinking about how you might do things differently. And similarly to Christina, this is for like I said, for both collective imagination practitioners and people working on central government innovation. So you might be working in a policy lab or a government innovation service looking to influence central government policies, practices, processes. You might also be looking for new or different ways to drive deeper change, or sense the limitations to current ways of working, feel some stuckness in the constraints that a lot of these systems have within them. Yeah, and you might just need a little bit of space outside of your usual ways of working to make some new connections, to expand what things you can bring into your practice and how you're working, and get support through some of the live challenges that you might be going through as well, from people that are both working in similar contexts, maybe in different places, and people that are kind of offering practices in new ways into the soup as well. Yeah, and or maybe you're a collective imagination practitioner and you want to be part of applying your practice in central government policy innovation kind of contexts, which might feel like a juicy challenge for you. Maybe you've done some work with central government before and feel like there's more space to kind of try something different, something else that you've been wanting to try that you haven't really had a chance to before. Maybe you have practices, methods, approaches that it feels really ripe for the sort of central government context and you want to bring it to that. Or maybe you just really want to build your network and portfolio of how you're applying your collective imagination practice in different spaces. Yeah, so that's a little bit about mine. Over to you, Christina, for the next little bit.
Wonderful. Yeah, and I think it's worth saying that the way we're thinking about this, we'll have 12 spaces on each huddle and a 50-50 split between people working in the context of government and people working collective imagination, obviously holding that some people might consider themselves both of those things, but so that we can pair people up and have that real kind of peer-to-peer happening as a whole group, but also at a pair level, which again, we know is one of the sort of tried and tested Huddle tools. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the practicalities and the journey, what it might feel like to be a part of this. So we'll be starting off in July, in the first week of July, and we'll have a couple of sessions that are kind of kick-off focused and are really about coming together as a group, building relationships, understanding where we're each coming from, setting our intentions, and doing a little bit of co-design of the journey together. There is a structure here, and myself and Dan as hosts will be holding the coordination of that. But in terms of deciding how we spend our time together, that will be a collaborative decision based on the particular set of experiences, skills, challenges in the mix. So we'll have 2 quite chunky sessions at the beginning to really get into that and decide what this wants to be together. We'll then enter into a rhythm of fortnightly meetups where we're meeting as a whole group and practicing, living into some collective imagination work based on the live kind of contexts that are in the mix. And that might look like the pairs kind of coming together and bringing a challenge and live working on it as a whole group. It might look like taking a particular collective imagination approach or tool and all having a go at it from a few different angles. But we'll do that on a fortnightly rhythm, so that will happen 6 times in the journey. And then in between those, in the weeks in between, there will be buddy meetups. So you'll be paired up and we'll look at how we can get some really complementary pairings and space to meet with your buddy and to kind of again get a bit deeper as we know is possible in that smaller context. And that, again, could be about peer coaching. It could be about skill share. It could be about a live problem and more of a kind of action learning approach. And then we'll finish with some sessions that are all about kind of synthesizing, harvesting, what has emerged, capturing, and what is that telling us about what's next? And the idea is that the three of us as Huddles as well would come together for a showcase moment at the end of October to start to share and externalize some of that and invite others in to what we've been discovering. Okay, next slide, please, Dan. Thanks. So yeah, in terms of commitment, and we'll share, it's worth saying, we'll share a blog afterwards where all these details are shared as well, but just to run through it all. So we have as I say, 4 months. We'll be kicking off in July, and the huddle will run until October. The commitment that we're asking for would be 2 hours per week, and that's contact time. So there'll be a 2-hour session every fortnight, and then the idea is that you've got kind of that 2-hour window in between for your buddy session. Maybe you're with your buddy for that full 2 hours, maybe it's not quite that much time, but you've got a bit of kind of time in between as well. And you might decide that you want to carve out more time in terms of taking that into your context, your work environment, but in terms of what we're asking for, 2 hours a week is the kind of minimum there. And then recognizing that it is the summer and it's tricky to commit to 100%, but we believe that for it to be as effective as it can be as a learning group, we would love to ask for 80%, a commitment of 80% of those meetings for you and for us and the whole group to be able to get the most out of it. So we've listed out all of the dates. Really do have a look and check it against holidays and such to see whether you feel like you could really make that. The Huddles are fully funded by Joseph Rowntree Foundation, and there is also a small access fund that can be access to support expenses or the time to engage, and we offer everyone the opportunity to access that and also to waive theirs if they don't feel that they need that, which can obviously then support somebody who it would support to have a greater amount, a greater segment of that. We'll be spending some time building a library of resources, and that's something that myself and Dan will coordinate, but you can all contribute to, so that there is something to come back to. And as I said before, we'll be co-creating a showcase as the kind of final moment at the end of October. And the final bit of practical stuff. In terms of how to apply, so we're fast approaching. The application deadline is this coming Monday, midday on Monday the 10th, and quite a quick turnaround. So you will hear back from us by that Friday, the 14th, and we will begin on the week beginning the 1st of July. So it's slightly different slots. So for my Huddle of local government, that will be starting on Tuesday the 2nd with our first kickoff, and Dan's on Wednesday the 3rd. And we have a short application form. There are different forms, so depending on which Huddle you're applying for, or perhaps you're applying for both, then it's a different form, and we'll pop those in the chat. Maybe, Dan, you could do that now, perhaps. And they're also linked out on the blogs. So it's just one short application form to apply. I think that is all the practical bits that I wanted to download. I'm sure that that's unearthed some questions, and we will have some time for questions. But before we do that, we're going to do some imagining together.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to have just, I think, 5 minutes in breakouts to have just a taste of let's use our imaginations. Let's see. Okay, so it's November 2024, so it's right at the end of this year. It's a few days after the showcase where we've all spoken about and shared our collective learning with the world. And you're in a cafe with your fellow huddlers, collective imagination huddlers, and you're talking about what was great about it. And one of you starts by saying, wow, that huddle was incredible. What I loved about it was... and yeah, we're going to give you just 5 minutes in breakouts. You'll be in either a pair or a 3, and just try and get into this space of project yourself into the future and start to chat about what would have made this a really special process for you. Don't worry if you can't participate in the breakout. Maybe just put your video off, or yeah, I'll try and maybe I'll make it so it's 3 or 4 people in each room, so that you've got a little bit more people. Okay, I'm going to open those now. It will be 3 or 4 people in each group, and it will be just 5 minutes. And I'll have a 15-second window to finish speaking when the time's up. Okay, yeah, enjoy. See you in 5. Awesome, welcome back. Welcome back from your future, from the future. Hopefully that was a useful, interesting projection of what you've unveiled for yourself that you might want to get out of these huddles. Yeah, and nice to meet a few people as well. Cool. I think we're going to move into Q&A. Is that right, Christina?
Yes. Yeah, I imagine there are questions that some of you are holding. And I think let's lose the slide, Dan, so that we've got a tiny bit more connection to our faces. Hello. Yeah, so really keen to, we've got sort of 22 minutes now for any questions that you're holding, or any provocations, anything you'd like to ask. Either pop it in the chat or just jump in, unmute, and yeah, tell us what you're thinking about.
There is one question in the chat already, actually, which was about the buddy sessions, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can talk through it if that's easier.
Oh yeah, great.
Go for it, Sam.
Yeah, no, it's very, very practical, but like the buddy meeting is expected to be at the same time. So is it like routinely Tuesday evenings, both every week, or is it flexible depending on buddy time?
Yeah, great question. Actually, Dan and I have decided to take slightly different approaches for this. So I'll answer for mine and Dan can answer for his own, because we're experimenting. So for the local gov, yeah, I have chosen to do it at the same time. So essentially we're meeting weekly at the same slot always. And in alternate times, sometimes that will be all as a group, and other times I will host a space where we pair off into buddies, and we just have a check-in at the beginning and the end of that. So yeah, for mine it will work that way. Should that be the best thing for the group? It's worth saying. I think there can be some flex if within that people say, actually, that's going to be really prohibitive and let's try another way. But that's how we're going to start off. And Dan, do you want to talk about your buddies?
Yeah, so for mine, I thought that the whole group time will be the fortnightly meetup, but the buddy sessions can be self-organized between the buddies, so whenever works for them is the way that I've approached it. I think there are pros and cons to both, but yeah, let's see.
Thanks both, appreciate it.
There is another question from Kathy in the chat. Will the fortnightly meetings be on Teams online?
Yes, so they will be online. I think probably Zoom, just for slightly more flexibility. But yes, online. And I can see another question around, curiosity about who else from the various convening teams, so the Collective Imagination Practice Community, such a long name, will be involved. Dan, do you maybe want to speak to that, because you're a little bit more in the behind the scenes?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who from the various convening teams. So there are going to be, so Jake, for example, from Canopy is going to be hosting one of the huddles. Yeah, I'm not sure. I know who you mean by the convening teams. Is it Canopy, JRF, Huddlecraft? Yeah. Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a huge participation from, like, Jake's hosting one, me from Huddlecraft is hosting one, and Christina's hosting one. But I think in terms of participation, it's open to everyone in the collective imagination practice community. And if people from those organizations, I guess, want to participate, they can apply. So it's open, but it's not set. Yeah, it's not like we're going to have X, Y, and Z from X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. Yeah, and I suppose then in terms of the kind of the learning and the seed swaps and that sort of thing, yeah, there will be sort of feedback loops, I suppose, in the teams from all of those convening organisations. Yeah. Molly, you have your hand up.
Hi, yeah. It was a question. I think you mentioned that there will be a publication towards at the end of the session. I can't remember when that was, but it was. I suppose the question was around issues around like confidentiality, or sort of how some of that can I suppose to be able to enable like really free conversation and ideas and stuff. But then I suppose there are some potentially tricky areas of what you'd be able to talk about or not, depending on use, and I suppose any kind of like Chatham House rules or whatever within the group, that kind of stuff.
Yes, great shout. So I think my thoughts on that initially are in those kickoff sessions, we really need to establish what the is it Chatham rules? How are we actually going to deal with that as it comes through? So I feel like that's something we'll want to establish as a group. And the way that we're currently thinking about the showcase is that the showcase would be probably an online event to share what the group wants to share, and that will be again decided as a group as to what it feels like can be shared, and perhaps that would involve some generalizing themes rather than taking specific examples, or working at negotiating that together. And it's likely then, I think, and Dan, I might defer to you on this, on what happened last year. I believe last year with the Huddles, there were then a series of kind of learning blogs that came out of. Not a sort of formal publication, but that was sort of the format of it. And again, I think anything that referenced what happened in the group or the organisations needs to go through, the people who are involved in the Huddle first. So that's my initial sense. I don't know, Dan, if you'd add anything.
No, I think that's it. I think it will be dependent on what's right for the group and what can be shared within the group, and that will be set in the kickoff. And I think, any learnings to be taken will be abstracted and be about the patterns and stuff at the end of the process that might be useful then for other people in those situations, but shouldn't be necessarily definitely not without consent, speaking about specific examples in specific contexts.
Important question, thank you. And I can see a question in the chat also about a similar question about last year's Collective Imagination Huddles. If you have any links, yes, so we can share. I think, why don't we pop a bunch of links in here about the Collective Imagination Huddles that happened last year, and the various, to be honest, I think probably just the Medium page of the Collective Imagination practice community has got all of those. So if we pop that in, then people can take a bit of a dive into those. Lovely, thanks. And Kathy.
I loved the slide that had the kind of non-linear journey of the group plotted, but it also mentioned in there about applying learning and applying the kind of new solutions to your current context. So I just wonder, what's the expectation of people to actually apply some new ideas and innovations in their own practice wherever they are?
Yes, great question. I think the intention behind these huddles is that they can enable the application of this work in their context. you're absolutely right to point out the non-linearity of it. That I think the expectation that that could happen in between every session or even within the 4 months of the meeting just might not be feasible for for different contexts. And I think we feel really open to different time frames and sort of ways of that happening. What we do ask in the application form is for people to think about the ways in which they can apply and influence, and that might depend on the particular role that they hold or the partnerships that they're working in, or so to really have thought deeply about what a sort of application of this practice might look like, even if it can't happen neatly in between the sessions. What I would say.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you, Christina.
Thanks. Dan, are you having a thought?
I was just reflecting on that, and I think it's just adding like I guess a sense of realism around the capacity of the people that participate and how much we're expected. It's like we're trying to put in the conditions for people to think about how they might apply. We're not expecting people to spend hours and hours of time putting the learnings into practice as we're going through the huddle necessarily. It's like, yeah, we're just being real as well, I guess, to say that.
Can I ask a question? Sorry, I can't seem to find the hands up sign. It's disappeared on I've been looking for it, I can't find it. Thanks so much for the session. I have a question around whether I'm the kind of person you're looking for to have in the huddle. So I work for a coalition of independent funders who would really like to reimagine the criminal justice system for women, which would definitely involves having different kind of conversations with central government. But is that a little bit too tangential to what who you're looking to have in these groups?
I think that's a great question, and we are getting some of these questions around like eligibility and am I the right sort of person. And I think for us it's the underlying spirit of it is that we're bringing collective imagination into live contexts which are so where they can be practiced. And so I guess it's almost like a question back to you about like whether you feel like you are working in a live like either you're bringing collective imagination practices that you want to put into practice in a context, in a sort of government context, or you've got a live context where you're really interested in bringing the collective imagination too. And so yeah, I think we don't want to draw really like rigid boundaries around that and around who and who not, but I think I think it is worth applying as well, just to get a sense of it. And just I'd say in your application, be quite specific about how you want to apply and what context you are coming from to paint a picture for us as we're making those decisions. Yeah. Christina, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that's that covers it well, thank you. And I think it was Molly and then Nicola. So yeah, Molly.
Thanks. I was just I put a question in the chat around how I suppose like how the different work streams will read across to each other. And I was sort of thinking, showcase would be great to obviously have like a shared space where these things, but there might be, and I guess again that thing of like going through the process and seeing where there are things aligning. So I suppose there's a bit of a question of like how how you're working in the background on like speaking to each other, to if you would sort of see opportunities for that to then facilitate those conversations. And then I suppose part of the reason I'm asking is that the area that I'm working in is kind of in an area of like emerging policy and establishing new guidance. And so I'm in local government, but working with central. And so there's like, I suppose I'm seeing a need for both, like for this to need to happen from all directions and as well, including from outside of government. So I guess long way of contextualizing that question, but also where do I apply for both, knowing that I would I'm just going to be joining one, I only have capacity to do that, but would you then swap notes and put me where I'd be best best seated, or
I'd say love the question. It's really Huddle crafty. It's like, how are we crossing our learning and learning from each other across these different streams? And I think it's a great question. And yeah, I think exactly like you say, that will be a bit emergent based on how the journeys are going, where we see potential for it as we're going. We will be meeting as hosts regularly throughout the process, so we'll have a bit of a sense of what's happening in each other's groups. Like if it feels like there's a real like rich vein to sort of tap into together, it might be the case that at one point we're like, why don't we combine these two huddles for like a shared peer feedback session, for example, and there can be a bit of sharing and what's live in each other's context and do some of that cross-fertilization. But that's not clear right now, and I don't think we want to like predetermine it. I think that'll be a sense of like sensing it as we go, but we will be meeting as hosts behind the scenes to sort of stay afloat of what's happening in each other's, and so that will be happening. And to your second question, yes, if you want to apply for both, we will be reviewing the applications together and thinking about if there are people that have applied for both, where people fit best. So you can do that if you want. Christina, anything to add on that?
Wonderful. Thanks. Perfect. Sorry, keeping track. That's on chat. Nicola.
Great, thanks guys. Maybe actually just adding on to that. So if you just apply for one, would it also be that if you guys see that we might be better for the other group, otherwise, should we be taking the time to apply for both?
Do you feel like you're on the government or collective imagination side? Is there
that's for the people who are on the bridging, either consultants or people who are doing
I mean, my view is that you'd probably apply for the one that you wanted to do, and to consider you within that pool. I don't think we'll do much switching of people to different huddles if they haven't applied to it.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. And then maybe just the question was, but I'm sure it's probably not a clear answer because you don't want to over design or over assume until the process happens, but just where you guys are wanting to go with this. Because I've seen quite a few different programs kind of trying to engage and help facilitate some, improved functioning and workings in the public sector. So just curious if there is kind of some kind of path as to where you guys are headed with this.
Yeah, good question. I feel like it is an experiment, and it's sort of that's kind of the frame that we're using, and we will be learning a lot through this process, and hopefully by the end of this we'll have a bit more of a sense of like, okay, it feels like there's energy or potential or like useful learnings for how we could either replicate, do it differently, bring it to different spaces within government. Hopefully there's useful learning to lead into the next thing, but I can't really say what that is yet. It feels like this is an experiment that could lead somewhere. What we're sensing is that there's a lot of interest to do the sort of Newham model, like the sort of thing that we're doing with Newham right now, which is a place-based huddle for people in Newham around a theme, like connecting people, connected lives, I think it's called. And it's like, okay, already we're learning that there's a lot of energy for this sort of thing around this sort of context in this place. So it's like, hopefully it will lead to other programs and adapted versions of this model to be most useful.
Perfect. Great. I figured as much, but I thought I'd just ask because between things like Newham and the other kind of working groups, I know in London there's a lot of meetings and cross-functional attempts, but not necessarily the action learning that this structure could maybe help facilitate. So cool. Okay, perfect. Thanks, guys.
Just kind of following that, like in the absence of kind of like the Newham focus on place, like do we have like any idea on the kind of themes and focuses? Is it like we as a collective will bring our separate challenges and we might deal with those week to week? Or is it more like the general themes of communication or addressing, I don't know, a significant problem or difficult colleagues, or like, is there like, what's the framing of each of the sessions, or is that for us to kind of decide based on our first couple of sessions?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one we've grappled with, as you can imagine, and been around a few cycles with already. And I think, one way that I imagine in people's contexts, challenges, we spend the two kickoff sessions looking at those. We'll obviously have some of that from the applications as well. And we look for threads. And it could be that we say actually that it's all in the particular challenges, and we pair people up and say, let's spend time really looking at those and trying out different sort of lenses to look at those with, and bring the whole group around it. Or it could be that we lay them all out and we say there are really two themes here, and why don't we go into those themes and again find different ways. So I think that it could be kind of the issue or the challenge in the centre. It could be a particular theme. It might be that there's real energy around one particular flavour of collective imagination practice that feels like it wants one issue, and we spend 6 sessions taking it deeper with, so that I think there's a few different sort of routes in, and where we had got to in the sort of designing of them was it probably makes sense to decide that as a group and design that as a group. But we have some ideas and some practices from other huddles to kind of present some options, I suppose. I don't know if you'd add anything, Dan.
Just that is sort of part of the kickoff sessions. So it's so each person is sort of bringing a sort of question or a thing that's really driving you to participate. And so I think there's something about sharing those and doing a bit of the co-design of the pathway forward based on that. And so, like Christina said, that's a space to see what is really live and relevant for that group.
Thanks both, that makes sense.
Wonderful. We are 1 minute out, so I think
I'm gonna have to hop off, but thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
So just any other questions, feel free to get in touch with us. I think both of our contact details are in the blogs, and feel free to reach out. Wonderful. Thanks so much, everyone, for coming. Really great to connect. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your afternoons. Take care.